Hi everyone. In this week's lesson, we're going to show you how to integrate databases into our Java projects. That is, we're going to show you how to communicate to a database programmatically, which is really exciting. We get all the power of a relational database into our Java websites, our Java GUIs, or our Java, heck, even our Java command line programs. Now, this lesson is really intended to be a student's first experience integrating databases into, well, not only into Java, but into any programming language. And so there are just a ton of different tools. I mean, there are a ton of different relational databases out there that we could certainly use. I've chosen to use SQLite for Java web programming. SQLite is, well, very lightweight. It's portable and it's relatively simple to get up and use if you've used Microsoft Access or MySQL. The experience should be very similar. And certainly if you have any questions on how to use SQLite, definitely let me know. So we're going to be using SQLite coupled with the, a SQLite driver. We're not going to be writing the sockets necessary to communicate to that database ourselves. We're going to be using somebody else's drivers. But we're also going to be using the third tool in there, which is the JDBC, or Java Database Connectivity, which is just the API used to communicate with that database. And so in this video, we're going to show you how to get set up with the various tools that you'll need and creating that project. And then we'll also show you how to create a very simple program that communicates to a database. And then finally, we're going to make that code a bit better with the database access object. And then at some point, we're going to use parameterized statements, which parameterized statements are really the way to go with JDBC. They simplify a lot of things for us. So that's really the roadmap. Again, in this video, we're just going to get set up with a new project and installing the various tools we need and making a database and getting things ready so that we can communicate with it. Again, I've chosen to use SQLite for Java Web. Now, there are many different SQLite database managers that you can use. You could I think in Database 1, they were showing how to use a SQLite Manager plugin within Firefox web browser. You could certainly use that. I think it'll do everything you need it to do. I personally don't enjoy using the SQLite Manager. It's like now you've added Firefox with a SQLite Manager. I don't really see the reason for that. And so I prefer, when I'm using SQLite, to use the SQLite Studio as my database manager. And so it's pretty straightforward. It looks a lot like the MySQL Workbench. It's very similar to Microsoft Access. It is portable, it's very lightweight, it's really easy to install, it's cross-platform. So again, you can click on this link here, which will take you to the SQLite page, and then you can go ahead and download your distribution. So again, you can download Windows distribution, the Mac OS version, or Linux. And so if you have any questions about how to install that or to get going with that, certainly let me know. So anyway, again, in this video, we're going to make a new project to really learn how to integrate databases into our Java projects. I thought last week we did something with turkeys. This week I thought we would do something with elves. Why not? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, you guessed it, make a new dynamic web project. So I'm going to make a new dynamic web project. Maybe we'll call it Santa's Workshop. I don't know if I like that. Maybe we'll call it the Elves Workshop. Why not? We're going to go ahead and leave the source folder the same per usual. We're going to generate a web.xml file. We'll go ahead and finish that up. So within that, I'm going to do the usual things I do when I'm building a new Java Web project. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a new Java package. So we're going to do cvtc.javaweb .elves. Why not? So we'll have that package there. I'm going to open up my web.xml and I'm going to quickly delete these welcome files here. There we go. Now, I'm going to leave it here. Again, at this point, I'm assuming you know how to add in servlets and to add in the various JSPs that we would need. And so really, I'm going to configure this project for using a database. Now, again, if you were using JSTL or all the other tools, you would certainly need to import all those. And very similar to importing JSTL, we're going to import the database drivers that we need. And so to do that, we're going to convert this Elves Workshop website or whatever to a Maven project. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish. And just like importing the JSTL library or other libraries that we've used, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the drivers that would communicate to a SQL-like database. And so I don't remember what these are. Fortunately, I have them up on the lesson for this week. We're going to go ahead and add the SQLite JDBC driver. So it's got a group ID of wrong text box, org.serial. I'm not really sure how to say that. The artifact ID is SQLite-JDBC, so SQLite-JDBC, and then the version, I believe, is 3.21.0. So 3.21.0. And we're going to go ahead and click OK. And that is the SQLite drivers that we need. Again, this has got all the sockets and everything that communicates to the database. We do not want to do that ourselves. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Then I'm going to quickly verify that SQLite JDBC drivers are in our library. Again, I see them here, and I can see it's brought in all the drivers we need to communicate to a SQLite database. Now we've added the drivers that will allow our Java code to communicate with a SQLite database. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new SQLite database. Of course, it'll have elves and their names and all that good stuff. But to do that, I'm going to add a folder into this elves workshop. And that's just so for development, I know where that database is, and so I can quickly find and access that database. And so to do that, I'm going to right-click and go New Folder. And I'm just going to add a databases folder to my elves workshop. Just very simple databases folder. This is where I'm going to put my .db files. Certainly, you don't have to do this. You could even use, I think there's this data source view that you could add in databases. Again, I haven't had much luck with it, and so I'm not going to use that. Anyway, this is the folder in which I'm going to create a new SQLite database. Now, again, the database manager tool I'm going to use is SQLite Studio, so I'm going to quickly launch that. Now, if you haven't used SQLite Studio, again, it's certainly much simpler than MySQL Workbench, and it's certainly much simpler than Microsoft Access. If you want to make a new database, you click this button here, which will create a new database. And so we're going to tell it now where to store that database. Again, I'm going to store it into this databases folder here. Again, you can put it anywhere you want. And so first thing you need to do is you need to navigate to your Eclipse workspace, and you need to find your file, I think, your Java project. Mine's called the Elves Workshop, and there I see the databases folder I created in the previous step. And I'm going to save that database as elves.db, and we're going to save that into the databases folder. And we're going to keep this permanent. That is, we're going to keep it in the configuration. We'll do a quick test of connection. We'll get the green checkbox, so it looks like we're good to go. And we'll click OK. And you should see the ELS database pop up here. Now back over in Eclipse, I'm going to refresh the databases folder, and when I open that, I do see the ELS database file appear here. And again, I'm just going to build a really simple database with a really simple table. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add, excuse me, wrong button. I want to double click that to open up the database. And you can see we have no tables in this database. I'm going to right click and create a table. And again, I'm going to give this table the same name as my database. We'll call it ELS. And to add columns to this database, there's this button right here next to this red X. So we're going to add a column. Of course, we're going to add an ID column, which is our primary key. Our primary key is of type integer. And then we're going to apply the various constraints to this column. Again, a lot of this I'm hoping is reviewed from database 1. So the constraints we're going to add to this our primary key, well, is of course primary key. All primary keys must be unique and they cannot be null. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then I'm going to add another table. I'm going to add a first name column. Rather, I think I'm going to call this, we'll call it first name like this, why not? And we're going to make that of type varchar, and we're going to limit the size of the ELS first name. I'm hoping none of the ELS have a name longer than 15 characters. If they do, whatever, this is for learning. So anyway, our first names do not need to be unique, but they cannot be null. That is, there must be a first name. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a last name column of type varchar. We'll allow the last name to only be of 15 characters, why not? And we're going to say that the last name cannot be null as well. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to add in, let's add in the ELS age. So we'll add an age column. Typically this is bad database habit. Age is something that's derived. Normally you would store a date. However, I just want to add an integer in there. So we're going to go ahead and add in another integer type of age. We won't allow that to be null. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to add in the ELS weight as well, because we'll get a numeric in there. So a numeric is a number that can have a decimal point. So we're going to have a weight in there. We'll say weight can't be null either. Again, I'm just populating a database with a couple random columns. I haven't given this much thought. So we've made all these columns. They haven't actually been created. We need to click this commit button to actually commit those changes to our ELS database. You can see the queries to be executed are pop up here, and so it's showing us the SQL code that it's going to run. That looks great, and we'll go ahead and commit that. So that creates the structure of this table. I'm going to go ahead into data, and now I'm going to add a couple ELS into our ELS table. So I'm going to do the plus button to add a new row, and we'll say the first ELF has an ID of 1. I'll add myself as the first ELF in there. There we are. And we'll go ahead and commit that. I'm going to go ahead and add another ELF, 2. We're going to go ahead and add John Gago. Let's say he's 50. And we'll say John weighs 112 pounds. And then we're going to go ahead and add in another ELF. We'll add in Mary Gago. That's actually my grandmother. My grandmother is 93, and I have no idea what she weighs. We'll say she weighs 160. I have no idea. Again, when you add in all these rows, we need to commit them to the database, pressing this checkbox. And again, there you go. There are our 3 ELFs for this project. And so that's how you can very quickly build a database using SQLite Studio. Certainly, if you wanted to, you could add all the foreign keys and everything else that you've learned. In database 1, however, that's sort of outside the scope of this week's lesson. And so I really don't want to focus on all the adding a foreign key. I'm going to assume you know how to do that or can certainly figure it out. Really, this lesson, this week's lesson, is talking to those databases that you would create in database 1 in Java. And so that's really all the stuff we need on the back end. And that's really all I'm going to focus on in this video. And so that's really all you need to create a database and to create the drivers that we need. So in the future video, we'll show you how to communicate with this database. So again, thanks for watching.